Welcome to Make Your Mark podcast, where guests share their experiences, insights, and tactics to help you accelerate your business. So building, scaling, and monetizing your business is made easier. And I will be your host, Kay Suthar. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Make Your Mark podcast. And oh boy, do I have an amazing guest for you today, right? And we're going to be talking about all sorts of things around business, right? The important things that's going to help us actually move the needle in our business. Now, our guest, his name is Chris Mercer, but he goes by Mercer, and he's an esteemed measurement marketing expert and a co-founder of Measurement Marketing IO, right? With his extensive knowledge and ability to simplify complex concepts, and we all love that, guys. Mercer has become a sought-after speaker at I can't even say words now. Prestigious conferences and events, including Traffic and Conversion. We've all heard about that. Social Media Marketing World. Oh my goodness, that is an amazing event. And Content Jam and so much more. Like, he has been everywhere. He absolutely knows his stuff, guys. And we're going to be talking a lot more in depth about what it all means about measurement and marketing and operations and all that good stuff that we all need in our business. So please welcome Chris Mercer, who goes by Mercer, to the stage. Hey, Chris, I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Kay. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So when I heard and I could see like all the things that you've been doing and how you actually help people with their businesses, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a good one, because even though people hate doing all the stats and the data and measurements and all of that, we know that that actually makes a difference in our business, right? This is how we're going to scale up. But
that's exactly right.
Right. And before we get into all that nitty gritty, right, we all know, Mercer, that it doesn't happen overnight. Right? There must have been a journey that you went through to get to where you are today. So I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about what that looks like. What were some of the ups and downs that you went through?
Great question. So the Mercer origin story, I actually started teaching WordPress videos, created a site called, WP Training Videos back in the day, that was there just to help people learn WordPress. And so when I was doing that, that was me just sort of cutting my teeth in the digital marketing world. I had people that would say, this is a lot of work. Can you just build a website for me? So I'm like, sure. And all of a sudden I start learning outsourcing. And now I have a team. And all of a sudden I'm not a freelancer who's doing some videos. I'm actually an agency owner, delivering websites. Ooh. But as a marketer, I was thinking like, everyone's going to start doing this. This is going to get commodified. So let's do this new thing. It was just hitting the States, actually, because Europe, it was coming from Europe, which was this thing called conversion rate optimization, which was new to the States. I think because Europe ran out of traffic first, because you just don't have the population, and we didn't. And that's why it came to us last. We actually decided we need to optimize later. We ran out of everybody.
That. It's funny.
So we started doing...
Normally everything starts in the US and then it goes.
Oh yeah, this was definitely Europe focused first. I think because you realized, we're out of traffic, we have to get better at this, and that's the idea. And US was like, we had 300 million people, so we were still getting first impressions, But what I did is it was like, okay, let's build a WordPress site, but let's deliver it to you, and then we're going to optimize that site. That was back in the early days, and of course, in order to optimize, you must first measure. And so we would set up their Google Analytics accounts, and it was just sort of a happy accident. The way that I set up those accounts tended to be very different from the way that everybody else on the planet was doing it. So when I was delivering the websites, people would see I would kind of walk them through. Here's how I can tell what's going on. Here's how I can tell if a Facebook ad caused the lead and if an email closed the sale and all that fun stuff. And then as they were doing that, the calls almost immediately changed. And it wasn't people coming in saying, hey, such and such said, you can build a website. It was, I was at this mastermind and this person showed me their Google Analytics. We don't need a website, but man, can you help us with that? And this is a big lesson for me, is listen to the market, because the market will tell you what to do next if you are willing to accept their advice. And I think that's a hard thing, believe it or not, for a lot of entrepreneurs to do, because we have this control thing that we have to get out there and forge our path. And in reality, it's just listening to what people want and giving that to them.
Absolutely.
And it makes the game easier, right? So that's what I did. And so we pivoted, and we stopped building the WordPress sites and all the other stuff. And we just moved into measurement marketing, because the intention was tracking and analytics. That immediately makes you think data science and data, and all the entrepreneurs are like, blah, like I'm not a numbers person. And you go in this negative mindset, but everybody can measure, right? Everybody knows measurement. It's a ruler, it's a tape measure. It's not
Right.
hard. And it truly isn't if you have the proper strategies. And that's where measurementmarketing.io as a brand was born. And then we really focus on teaching that to companies in-house so they can have those skills. I think it's a really needed skill that most companies do not have.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. But I know there's some listeners out there that's probably thinking, but like people out there are measuring everything, right?
That's the
If you're
challenge. Yeah.
right, if you're a small business or even a startup, like what should be the first thing that you're measuring that you should be looking at, even if you can't do it all right now?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And honestly, it's a fallacy. It's what I call social proof in reverse. Everybody's complaining about their numbers. I don't know what questions to be asking, or I have all this data. I have no idea what to do with it. And everybody goes and talks to everybody. Everybody goes, yeah, me too. And then
Yeah.
everyone goes, okay, well, let's keep doing the same thing. And I'm like, why would you do that? You're clearly telling each other what we're doing is not working, and then immediately agree to just keep doing that. And it makes no sense, right? Because you're going to keep getting the same problems and complaints,
Right.
multi-touch attribution, all the other stuff that people talk about. This is why the problem is still there, because no one's going, there's maybe we should not do it this way anymore, right?
Mm,
So what we teach is simplicity. And that's the idea. You don't need to measure everything. We don't need more data, right? We
right.
don't need more data. What we need is the correct data. We need the information that to get the answers that we need to be able to get so we can take actions. We don't even want insights. I don't like using insights as a word because I think that's an overused word too. You don't care about insights. What you care about is what do I do next? An action.
Right.
So when you set up your measurement, you set it up specifically so that it leads to action. And the way to do that, I'm going to kind of give you a little simple plan. This is like the very first stage of a framework would be to plan things out properly. And this is where most people are not doing that correct, which is why if that foundation's not there, everything falls apart. So it's really 3 steps. The first is you list out the questions you're trying to get answers to. The second is you list out where you're going to get that information. So you know where you're going to get those answers. And the third, and this is the most important step, is you think about what am I going to do? What actions am I going to take based on the answers that I am about to get? So you think about that thing before you open up Google Analytics, before you go to Facebook Ads Manager, before you open that spreadsheet or look at your cart or whatever the thing is you're trying to interact with, that's a number. You already know what you're going to do with it. And it's in a specific way, kind of like, good, bad, and better, where if the number, let's pretend it's an opt-in rate. So let's say I'm asking a question, what's my opt-in rate?
Right.
The information I'm going to need to collect in order to get that answer would be the number of page views of the offer, and then maybe the number of thank you page views that I get. I can divide those out and I can figure out my conversion rate. Okay, so far so good. Then the action step. And this is where you think to yourself, okay, what do I think this number is going to be? And this is the part that people get hung up because they're trying to be right all the time. And the goal is not to be right, it's just to be less wrong. You're always going to be wrong. Get used to that. Just be less wrong. So what you do is you go, okay, well, I think I'm going to do, my conversion rate is going to be 30 to 35%. Is it? I don't know. Who cares? Doesn't matter. I think it'll be 30, 35%. Okay. If it's 30, 35%, what are you going to do? Well, if it comes in like I think it's going to, I'm going to try to scale the traffic. I'll add more budget. I'll get more leads. Okay, great.
Right.
What if it's substantially lower than 30%? What are we going to do? Oh, well, we might want to work on the targeting, or I might want to look at the offer in that case. Maybe it's a bad offer that people don't want. All right, great. What are we going to do if it's really high? What if it's 50 or 60%? Because that can equally be just as bad. And you go, wow, if it's that high, that's probably meaning that I've got the exact right hot audience. And I really need to expand the targeting because net, I'll get more leads because it's too high in that case.
Right.
And it's like, all right, now I know what I'm going to do if the answer is lower than I want, higher than I want, or just right. And at that point, when you use your measurement system, you now open up your dashboard, you see that number, it says 37%. You go, you know what, that's within range. I go scale traffic. Done. Now you go back to work and you're not staring at numbers all day long because you designed your measurement system to lead to action and not deliver information, which is what most people do.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Okay. So you have systems to do this, right? There's processes and things like that can be done, right? And you need systems and platforms to do this, or we're not doing it all by hand. And so, again, this is another thing that people don't have any clue about when it comes to tech and systems and all of this. Now, do you have different systems for different size of business that you're working with, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. The answer is you sort of grow into the tech. We have a framework that we teach, and then we have levels of that framework, the different stages. And the stages go cave, valley, and summit. So the
Oh,
cave is where you're in the cave, wandering around the dark, trying to figure out what's working, what's not. That's kind of what a lot of early businesses in this are doing.
right.
So when you're in the cave, the goal is learn simplicity.
Mm,
And as a general rule, it's really easy to make things complex. That's not a skill. Simplicity is a skill. It is a harder skill to learn. So in
yeah.
the cave, we teach simplicity, which means sometimes you're ripping out tech. You don't need all the fancy
Oh,
bells and whistles because all these different push button easy tools that everyone's using to try to measure stuff are all coming sort of pre-installed with their own idea of what your strategy is, but they don't know your strategy. So when you
right.
have all these different tools coming in, the tools start to dictate your strategy. And that's the opposite is what should be happening. You should have a measurement strategy that dictates how you use those tools, Google Analytics included. So when you're just working in the cave, you can start with just a simple tool like Google Analytics because it collects information, it stores that information, and it has reports, albeit they're a little ugly, but it has reports that you can get the answers to the things you're looking for so you can go take action, right?
Mm,
That's possible. The next stage is what we call the valley of visibility. Instead of once you sort of walk out of the cave, we describe this as riding the bike. So you're in the valley, you want to get around a little bit faster. So you're going to be riding a bike. But bicycle, it's a little more complex as a vehicle. It's not as easy as walking. It takes a little bit of time. There's a little bit of maintenance to riding a bike, but it's not that hard. It's a little more complex, but not that much more complex. So this is where you might add tools like Google Tag Manager because it does a better job at collecting very specific behaviors. For
ah,
example, you can tell Tag Manager when the pricing table comes into the viewable browser window for 5 seconds, go tell Facebook that they are considering the purchase, right? You can get real specific in those behaviors. So you might add that on. So now it's in charge of collecting behaviors, and then Google Analytics stores and still reports. And then eventually you might add something called Looker Studio, again, something free from Google.
yeah.
That Looker Studio, its specialty is to make reports. And so you can make useful reports that you can actually lead to action. So now you've got Tag Manager, Google Analytics, and Looker Studio. So those three tools is something where you grow into the complexity. Do not start there because it's too hard to learn them all at the same
Mm,
time. You start
okay.
with Google Analytics, you grow into that complexity. And then you can keep coming up. The summit is what we call the mountaintop. And to get to the mountaintop, you need a helicopter. Helicopters are incredibly complex. They need teams. There's a lot of maintenance, right? They're hard to use. So you have to grow into that complexity. And the number one mistake most people do is they end up building a helicopter in the cave. So they
Oh,
don't know how to keep things simple and they try to do complex things, but they're in a place where they have to keep things simple. And that's where you end up having these organizations that have all these challenges where it's like, well, we got all the numbers, we have no idea what to do with them. We're busy, 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 but nothing's actually getting done. And that's the helicopter in the cave mentality. So once you learn simplicity, you actually start making progress and you build upon those foundations. And what's the kind of really awesome part of that is it is natural. It's like a natural growth. Kind of like
right.
when you plant a seed in the ground, you don't have to tell it how to do its job. It just sort of happens. That's
Yeah.
the idea with skills when they're taught properly.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Now, it's something that you just said there. You mentioned about building a helicopter in a cave, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, well, this big person that's making millions of dollars is doing it this way. So we have to do it that way. That's how
Exactly.
you become
Right.
successful, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say to someone that comes to you saying that? And have you had anyone say that to you?
Oh, all the time. Because that's the idea. Like I might be on stage saying, hey, you know it'd be great. You need a velocity of return report that shows you what your lead is worth on day 0, on day 7, on day 14, on day 30, on day 60, on day 90, and you can
Right.
do your CPAs and blah, blah, blah. And everyone goes, yes, that'd be amazing. However, that is incredibly complex to build correctly.
Mm,
It's very complex. You need skills for that. So you've got to build those skills into that. And the way when everyone comes to me and they'll say things like, oh, I want this. The way I'll
right.
describe it is it's kind of like going to a gym.
Mm,
So if I'm at the gym and I'm bench pressing 400 pounds, which I cannot do, but let's pretend I could. So I'm bench pressing 400 pounds and you come into that gym and you're like, I would also like to bench 400 pounds, but you're
right.
just starting out. You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to hurt yourself, right? And
Hmm.
that's exactly what it's like. We call it measurement muscle for that reason. You have to build measurement muscle on your team to handle the weight of a certain type of system that you want to use. And so you build your skills, you build your team skills, you understand how to use the tools, and then very naturally, just like muscle, I don't have to tell my muscles how to build themselves. They do it automatically as long as I'm exercising them. They'll naturally grow into that. And you'll look back and say, hey, you know what? It's been, maybe 6 months and now we've got a velocity of return report, but we knew how to do it. We built the muscle along the way. It's a solid foundation. And you avoid that house of cards thing that sometimes happens where
Yes.
people are spending a lot of time doing a lot of stuff and then eventually they end up scratching it all and starting over again, and that reset thing that happens over and over in companies is because of that. They don't have those solid foundations. So that's how I describe it. It's like you wouldn't expect the gym to all of a sudden that just because you decided it was 400 pounds that you can do it. You have to earn and learn your way in there. Same thing when it comes to measurement skills. Fortunately, it doesn't take a long time. I would say at least 90 days. You want to give yourself some time to sort of get out of the cave and practice the valley. But then you'll naturally grow into it from there.
Oh, interesting. Oh, nice. That's not very long at all. At all. As long as you keep going, you're consistent, right?
That's the trick. It's the consistency. That's the trick.
Right.
Because there's going to be frustrating things. There's going to be things you didn't account for. There's going to be new areas that you're uncomfortable with, and you sort of grow into those. And that's where whether you find teaching from us or anyone else that does this, the goal is have a place that you can go to get some support and talk through that as you learn those skills. Doesn't matter how you do it, just the fact that you have that mechanism in place.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I love this. Now, when someone comes in, a new client, right, and they say, right, Mercer, I need your help, right? I don't know what I'm doing right now. And it could be at different levels of their business. What does your process look like? What's the first thing that you do with your clients? Could you just walk us through what that looks like?
Yeah, it's really, it goes through the framework, and I'm going to try to see where they're not using a proper measurement strategy. So the strategy itself is really you plan things out, and we talked about that. We call it the KIA process because it's questions, Q, the information to get the answers, which is the I, right? So QI,
Right.
and then the A is the actions, right? What actions are we going to take? So that's already where most people have failed at that point. Not because they wanted to, they weren't aware that that's how it worked, right? Once you're aware of it, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got the recipe. Now I'll use the recipe. So we work on their plans. Then we move into the build. Now, in the build, that's where you're actually using the tools, like setting up Google Analytics or Tag Manager, whatever the tool is that you're playing around with.
Right.
The idea is you've got to make sure that that platform understands the results you're trying to measure for. And the mistake that most companies make is they just measure for leads or they measure for sales, and they're measuring for the end result of a customer journey. But that's not the best question to be asking. It's an important question. You need to know. But the more important question is, how did that happen? So if you're getting a good result, you know how you're getting a good result and you can scale it. If you're getting a poor result, then you know how to fix it because you can see in the machinery of where the customer journey is not quite going the way you want it to. So we talk about this ACT method when we measure results. You measure how many people you're asking to join whatever the user journey is. How many people did you ask to join that journey? How many of those actually gave you some sort of behavior like they were considering joining? And then how many of those actually transacted at the end, the ACT model? So as an example, like a typical, let's say, direct response funnel, it would be the offer page is your ask. The cart page might be that they're showing some sort of consideration. And then when they hit that thank you page, they, of course, have transacted, right? So now you know the journey. And so if you're not getting the transactions, is it because you're not asking enough people? Or is it because those people that you're asking are not considering? And now you sort of know where to focus your marketing efforts on based on that. So we set up the build and we measure the results. We help them organize their traffic so their traffic is identifying itself. So one traffic source says, hey, I'm a Facebook ad. I'm bringing a brand new cold audience who happens to like this other group that's similar to what you do. And I'm just trying to make them aware of the product. Let me know how I did. And then right after that, there's an email that says, hey, I'm email number 7 of the 12-part autoresponder series. I'm trying to get them to buy this product with a 20% coupon code. Let me know how I did. And when that's happening, you start to see what we call the natural story. So that it stops looking like the matrix in Google Analytics and it starts just revealing itself to you. You're like, wow, I know how to read this now. So at that point, we've got the plan, we've got the build. The final step is the launch. That is actually using the measurement system properly. Very first step, and this is a mindset shift, is listen. Well, what are we listening for? We're listening to the conversation that's happening between the users and the website. Just like you and I are having a conversation, I'm going to adjust what I say based on what you say and vice versa. Well, that's happening between the users and your website right now. But how do we know what their side of the conversation is so we can adjust the website's side of the conversation? Measurement is how we know. And the better that you get at measurement and the different skills and tools, the closer you can listen in, the more details you can hear. So the more nuances and better conversation you can craft on the website side. So the first step is listen to that conversation using the trends and patterns that we see in our numbers as they come through. At that point, and this is the next thing that individuals mostly skip because they're not aware, there should be a forecast that you're measuring against. In other words, you already know how the marketing is supposed to work. And this is one of my pet peeves. Most people do forensic marketing, which is they're asking questions like, what happened to that $1,000 I spent on Facebook last week? What they should be asking is what's going to happen to the $1,000 I'm going to spend next week? And there's a plan. that says something like, well, we know we're going to average $1,000, fine. Dollar per click is what we should be doing because our CPMs are going to be whatever they're going to be. Then we have $1 per click coming over, 30 to 35% will opt in. And within 7 days, the email series will close them for $100 each, therefore creating this much revenue. And you have that plan and you're measuring every single one of those steps. So now when you're listening to the conversation, you're comparing it to that forecast and you're going, okay, is this actually working the way it's supposed to? Which is very much like instead of driving through the rearview mirror, like most companies do, you're driving through the actual windshield and you have your hands on the steering wheel. It's a set of control. When you see, hey, you know what? It came in at $2 a click. Everything else worked fine, but it came in at $2 a click. Do you focus on the price and the offer? No, because we know where to optimize. And that's that final step of the launch. It's sort of measurement when it's done right will tell you exactly where to focus, where the best chance of you moving the needle is, and to where focus those limited resources that we all have as marketers and marketing teams. So that's the idea. And most marketers are always trying to optimize and they skip all those other steps. They don't ask the right questions. They're not gathering information. They haven't thought about the actions. The platform doesn't know what results they're trying to get. It can't identify the traffic. There is no natural story. They're not listening to the conversation and there is no forecast. And then they try to optimize. This is what causes this. I think Dan Kennedy called it random acts of marketing, where you're just guessing. Or worse, you go to masterminds and then you pay people to randomly professionally guess for you. And that's not at all who has the answers. Your market has the answers. And this goes back to that initial lesson that we talked about in the beginning. If you learn to listen to your market and you accept those answers, they will tell you what to do next. And they will grow your company faster than you can, but they're in control. And then measurement allows us to connect into that market. So that's how we think about it. It's a very different mindset, but I think it's a lot easier when you think about it like that. It opens up and you're not thinking about tracking and analytics anymore. Measurement is much bigger than that. It's tracking analytics is part of it, but it's not it. Measurement's a much bigger thing.
Absolutely. Now, you've gone into so much detail there. I love it, right? Because you gave us a very step-by-step process on what that all looks like. But the biggest thing that I'm taking away from what you're saying right now is all of this, right, comes down to mindset, right?
Exactly right.
And so at what point, right, I'm really curious as to how you learned or how you even shifted your mindset to get to where you are, because we can't do that overnight. That takes work, right? And so how did you manage to do that? And what tips would you give to anybody else? Because I think that's the biggest challenge people are having, and most of the time they can't see it, like you mentioned already.
Yeah. If I had to really put it down, it's an incredible question. It really is. If I narrowed it down to just one thing, I have a thing in my head I call useful beliefs. Useful beliefs do not have to be true. I think we've been in enough society stuff to realize like truth doesn't matter. It's what you believe that matters, right? But because I have useful beliefs because they are useful for me. And one of those useful beliefs is I 100% believe I could be wrong. Doesn't mean I am. It just means I could be. So I'm open to a different way of looking at things. And so when you smash up against the same thing because I started the same way everybody else did. I had the same problems everybody else did. The only thing I did different was go, I wonder if I'm wrong about doing this. Not let's go talk to everybody and everybody has the same problem. So let's just keep doing the same thing. I went, well, maybe I'm wrong about doing it the way everyone's doing it. Let's see if there's a different way. And then maybe that worked a little bit, but not all the way. But I went, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong about my first guess. Let's try to do the second guess. Let's try to do the third guess. And I'm very, very open to being wrong. It does not mean I believe I am wrong. It just believes I could be wrong. That's a very useful belief. And I think if more individuals are doing that, you're more likely to see solutions, because if you do not believe you are wrong, you're not even open to the new ways.
Absolutely.
You cannot see them. So that would be the most powerful thing, is just the useful belief that you could be wrong. Doesn't mean you are, just means you could be.
Yeah, because wrong, I feel like it's a word that nobody likes. Nobody, it really does. Right. And to be okay with possibly being wrong, right? That's a whole different shift altogether.
Yeah. Right? And the best part about that, I can say from experience, is once you've crossed that bridge, it kind of feels like you're walking through fire in the beginning, because nobody wants to believe they're wrong. Right. But that's the idea. I'm not saying you are wrong, and that's the trick. You're not saying you're wrong. You're being open to being wrong. And I talk about in probabilities. There's the probabilities that I'm right, but there is a possibility that I am wrong. It could be 99.999% probability that I am correct, but but there is always that 0.00001 chance that I am
Mm.
wrong. And that's all it is. And once you believe that and you accept that, the sting is gone. There is no, you don't worry about being wrong anymore. So you're more open, you're more flexible, you can take action faster. Specifically, that's how I did it with the measurement system, was that belief.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny because there's a friend of mine that always says, he goes, you can be right or you can be rich. Which one do you want to be?
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's some people who get so stuck. It's almost like a stubborn thing. They're not trying to be. They're not
Yeah.
making that decision, but that is the result of it.
Mm.
Exactly right. Yep.
Is that something you had to work on yourself, or was that just something that just clicked to you?
I think to some extent, yeah. Like it was probably in the early days that I learned that lesson by just being open to learning, seeing new
Mm.
things and just kind of going out there going, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And
Yeah.
the only reason I could think that was because I deep down believed that I could be wrong. But it
Mm.
wasn't, it took me years and years and years to make that a conscious thing where I was aware that that was the belief and go, that's a useful belief. Now that I'm aware of that belief, I'm going to use it everywhere. And
Yeah.
since I've done that, it's like life has gotten easier, business has gotten easier
Right.
because I'm more open to things, relationships have gotten easier, because of that. And I think that, just for society in general would get a little easier if people were just like, I might be wrong about this. Here's what I believe, but I might be wrong. And let me see your side of it. And when you do that, when you're open to those new things, the things just start to unlock a little bit, and then real growth naturally happens, which is the beauty of it. You don't have to make it happen. It just sort of starts feeling like it is happening without you putting so much effort into it.
Absolutely. Now that makes complete sense to me because you're also thinking it must make it easier when you're building and hiring people in your team as well,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have our one of my favorite people on the team, and they're all my favorites. But Julie Brade, our director of measurement, she started with us as a digital marketing assistant, for a few bucks, $15 an hour, back in the Craigslist days, when we found her on Craigslist, and this was
Wow.
9 years ago, and she's grown. She didn't know Google Analytics or Tag Manager or any of these tools. Half of them didn't even exist when she was hired. She came in, she grew, she learned. We did our best to make sure that that's the mindset that everybody has in the organization.
Yeah.
And now she's our director of measurement. She runs the measurement team. She handles clients. She runs the instructor team. And she's growing further. She's got plans to, take over as CEO one day. And that's what we want too, as especially as a business owner, as the entrepreneur. I don't want to have to work all day. I want to get to that just investor mode, right? So the role of the entrepreneur is to grow the team. That's it. You develop your team. The role of the team is then to grow the company. And so we're very focused on developing our team. And you're right, that mindset is key to that.
Yeah, it seriously can unlock so many different things for your clients, for your business, for yourself, like in every direction. It's a very powerful tool. And I love that shift, but it does have to be worked on, right? You got to be aware of it and you got to stop
It's
yourself.
muscle. It's
Yeah.
muscle. You have to go to the gym. You can't just make a
Mm,
decision and all of a sudden decide you're going to lift 400 pounds. That's not how life works.
absolutely.
You have to earn your way into that. But the decision is every day you try. That's
Mm,
the idea. Every day you go through the motions. Every day you're willing to be wrong. Every day you're willing to fail, right? None of that matters. And you just go, cool, I'm going to try again. I'm going to try again. Because every day you do that, every day you go to the gym, no matter, even if you mess up, you still gain a little bit more muscle. Maybe not as much as you could have, but a little bit. And that consistent progress, that consistent decision to keep trying and keep at it and be open to being wrong, that's what will lead you there.
I love that. I love that. Oh my goodness. Mercer, there's been so many golden nuggets in such a short amount of time already. I know people are thinking, oh my goodness, I need to speak with him. I need to have a conversation with Mercer. So at this point, where can people go to connect with you to learn more?
Absolutely. Well, if the measurement thing entices you, absolutely measurementmarketing.io was the best place to go. Check out that brand, and we can help you out in the measurement side of things. If more of the entrepreneurial training is kind of what you're looking for, and the systems and working with team members, developing your team, things like that, we've got a brand called profitschool.com that you can go to. So either measurementmarketing.io if you want to learn the measurement stuff, or profitschool.com for the business ops. And either way, we'd be happy to meet you.
Perfect. Now, you did mention the Profit School. I want to go in a little bit more detail as to what that is. So you've got two different companies that help your clients in two different ways. So what is Profit School, just for people that are listening and not too sure?
Profit School is really geared for teams of 15 or less right now. And it's geared for what we call the wagon wheel entrepreneur, which is the entrepreneur who's saying things like, why am I the one that always has to find the errors? How come I can't find the right team? Why is it that if I leave the organization, I have to go to an event or something, that everything stops and nobody can figure out their own answers and all of that sort of stuff, where you're in the middle of the wagon wheel and everything's coming at you all the time and nobody seems to be able to work on their own? Every entrepreneur goes through that. I did too. Everyone. But that's because there is a system that you are just not aware of that is creating that. That's why it's so consistent. That's why every entrepreneur has that issue, because they're all using the same system, which is when you become a freelancer, you hire your first VA. Now all of a sudden you actually, what you don't realize, you just hired yourself as an owner now and as a manager. Right. So now you've got all these additional roles, but you didn't go learn how to become a business owner. You didn't learn how to become a manager. So that's what happens. You just sort of start farming off work and not necessarily training your team and build and understanding you have to develop your team. So we help those companies get out of that wagon wheel and into more what we call the race car, which is like your team is in pit crew and they're allowing you to drive the race, to win the race for them, for everybody. Then you can do what you do. In other words, they're not providing you work anymore. They're actually giving you focus. And they take on the work. And then eventually it's where you get into that private jet mode, we call it, where it's like, okay, you're above, you've got your private jet, you've got where you want to be. And the team has their own focus and they have their own work and they're operating independently so that, they can build the company for you. And your job is just to make sure that they have everything that they need to be able to do that. So that's what Profit School is about, is having that system in place and helping entrepreneurs to go through that.
Oh, I love that. And so how long does that process take from being the one that everyone's coming to then building that jet where you can just kind of fly free fall?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can't promise that in 90 days you get to that jet mode.
Oh,
That's not
what,
it. Right. I wish. I know. I want to sell those easy buttons so much. I just don't have any. I just have the it takes a little bit of work button. But the idea is that the work doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be difficult. And so we teach a process we call OPS, which is offers, products, and then systems. And everything starts with systems. And so we really focus on those systems and use kind of the same way. You go through the wagon wheel system, you become aware of it, you define it. Once you can see the system, you go, oh, that doesn't make sense. And then you will adjust it. But you cannot fix what you cannot see. So we help entrepreneurs with that, a lot of that mindset training, and then you grow from there into the next variations of that. But I would say initially, again, it's that same 90 days to kind of get the core of the framework down, to actually sort of learn how the machinery works in the gym. And then it's just keep going to the gym. And then we help everybody go through it at the different levels that they need to.
I see. Now, is it different? Are the systems different depending on if you're selling a product or a service or
no?
No?
No, they're not, because that's the idea of this. This system is just how business operates as a concept. So every product, when we say product, a service business provides products. They may not have a physical product, right? But it is still a product that they sell. So that's all that matters there, is that idea of the product. The systems, all the systems operate the same way. That is simple. When everything is this, when there's a universal way of doing things that always works, no matter who you are, where you are, what you are in the company. Managers can use this in an organization to help build their teams, right? Team members can use this to help build themselves so they can one day run teams. And owners can do it to help build a team member who can eventually build their own team. So that core concept is super important. And that's why I say that simplicity is hard. So we've boiled that down into a simple framework that is easy to understand, easy to implement, and to get started with. But you got to learn how to keep it simple. It's the same thing with measurement. You have to learn simplicity as a business owner first, rip out some of the complexity that you've built, and then you slowly start stair-stepping on and you start feeling momentum and this natural growth. And at that point, it's just keeping the plate spinning now that you've got the thing up and running. And that's what we are there to help everybody do.
Oh, I love this. Oh my goodness. I feel like, Mercer, I can speak with you all day about this. This is awesome information, right, that we all need to hear. And so, again, if people want to connect with you, where can they go? Please do mention it to our listeners one more time.
Absolutely. So again, measurementmarketing.io for the measurement training, if you want to learn all about that. And if the business operations, the entrepreneurial training with your team to kind of help you get unstuck sounds more enticing, then profitschool.com.
I love this, guys. I urge you to go ahead, right, and check out those sites. Reach out to Mercer if you have questions, right, because he can absolutely help you to get unstuck, because that's probably how you're feeling right now and it's wearing you down. You're frustrated. Guess what? It can stop right now. All you have to do is go ahead and connect with Mercer. Mercer, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Like I said, so many golden nuggets in such a short amount of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kay. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening to Make Your Mark podcast at www.makeyourmarkpodcast.com. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get this and every other episode that comes out. We have lots of great stuff coming, so make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss it. And thank you in advance for all the reviews and comments. I appreciate it so much, and I look forward to serving you in next week's episode.